Hey guys, it's me, Olivie Blake, and this is me not writing. So, first things first, scrunchies are back, okay? And I'm gonna need all of you to get on this revolution. I just got 18 velvet scrunchies for $8 on Amazon. So this is what we're doing now. I hope you guys are on board. Also, in other news, I need you guys to keep me on track with something. So I need to perform for my brother-in-law's wedding in the Dominican this December. And I don't normally accompany myself, so I kind of have to improve my somewhat non-existent ukulele skills. So anyway, I'm gonna need you guys to keep me on track here because this is where we are right now, okay? Wise men say only fools rush in, but I can't help falling in love with you. So we're not doing great. So I'm gonna need you to check in with me to make sure I'm doing that. Sidebar, that is the song that Mr. Blake proposed to me with. The version of the guy from 21 Pilots doing it with a ukulele. So here we are, full circle. I have my dagger, I got my wine. Anyway, let's move on. Okay. So, hi Olivie, in your video you talked about Mr. Blake discovering gender roles, becoming more aware, etc. Were you solely influencing this? Do you have any advice on how to influence the men in your life to think woke? I'm talking specifically about my brother here, but in general too for a future significant other. There's really no easy answer for this, because I would definitely say that when I first met Mr. Blake, he was super not woke and not very interested in women's issues, shall we say? You have to discuss the hard things with the men in your life. You have to make the men in your life uncomfortable, which is something I said last week. Don't unleash your feminist rage on them, but they need to be exposed to things that society tells them it's okay to shelter themselves from. Basically, the only time that people see things that isn't their experience is when they're exposed to it, right? You're the only person, for now, in your brother's life who can normalize the female experience. He's not going to pay any attention to it unless you make him see what it's like to be a woman. And that can be in a lot of small ways. That can be in watching female-centric films. That can be in recommending books that have female protagonists. I'm super guilty of this, okay? So there's a bunch of guys in my boxing class who were nice enough to read my book, Masters of Death. And, I wouldn't say that I write for a specific gender. I think being a woman, and with a mostly female audience, I mostly write romance, and I don't really concern myself with whether, who should be reading it. But in my head, I thought of Masters of Death as, perfectly fine. Boys can enjoy it. Whereas I think of Lovely Tangled Vices, which is about a witch sorority and a sisterly rivalry, as being kind of I wasn't recommending it to them. So, they ask me all the time what I'm writing. I think it's possibly more interesting than their jobs, or at least I can make it sound more interesting than their jobs. And I found myself depreciating the value of Lovely Tangled Vices. Just being I just don't know if you would have any interest in it. It's not for you. You're not its intended audience. And while that is, in a lot of ways a valid argument, one of them was why not? And it occurred to me, because I always ask everyone who their favorite Masters of Death character is. So one of these guys, his favorite character was Isis, a woman. Sort of. Another one, his favorite character was Mayra, definitely a woman. Mr. Blake's favorite character is Vi. The men who read my books seem to really appreciate the female characters, so why would I assume that they wouldn't be interested in a book that was predominantly female? there's literally no reason for me to think that, except we've created this genre of women's fiction, right? Which is insane. There's no such thing as men's fiction. We read books about male protagonists. We watch movies that are about all men. So basically what I'm saying is just expose your brother or your significant other to all the same things that you are exposed to. Don't shelter them from something because you think they might not care, because of course they don't. Why would they care if you tell them it's not for them or it's not, they can't relate to it? Of course they can relate to it. They should relate to it. If we can relate to the male experience, they can certainly relate to the female experience. So don't be ashamed of that chick flick you want to watch. Don't be ashamed of the romance book you're reading. Just don't be afraid to talk about how issues affect you as a woman. If that turns into an argument, then it turns into an argument. I mean, especially with your brother, you're going to argue with them anyway. They're just not forced to confront the reality of what's around them all that often. So don't let them get away with that. I mean, when it comes to a significant other, it's kind of the same thing where it's just don't hide. Yeah, just don't hide from them. Don't hide your experience from them in any way because you feel like you shouldn't talk about things, or that they won't care about things. You don't know that. And if they don't care about things, or if they, so many men think women aren't funny, right? That's ridiculous. Make them watch female stand-up comics. Make them watch female-driven comedies. I mean, sure, you can't forcibly tie them to a chair and make it happen, but insist on it every now and then. They need to experience more of the world, okay? Speaking of comics, I was just thinking about how great it is that it's kind of like in vogue now to love your wife. I mean, John Mulaney is the perfect example of that. But also, so John Bellion, who I love, just came out with a new song that's called Conversations with My Wife, and it's, just a song about how much he loves her. But there is a big difference between a love song to, just a love song, and a love song that's specifically Conversations with My Wife. This kind of idea that we're normalizing committed relationships, that men should be in love with the person they're with and not just fascinated with the, manic pixie dream girl concept, is kind of great. I don't know. I just feel like we're kind of teetering on the edge of normalizing the experience that the woman in your life is valuable. She's not valuable like an object. You didn't pay for her. She is worthy on her own. She brings something to your life. And I don't know. This John Bellion song just came out today, and I was just thinking about how great it is, that the new normal is to love your spouse, or to think about the women in your life. I think, just don't assume that he's not interested, I guess. You don't know people's experiences until you hear their stories. That's part of what I love about writing and trying to talk about different people's experiences. And there's so many people who don't like certain characters, and that's fine, but at least you're seeing them. At least you're seeing something different, something new, the inside of someone's head and what they think and what they believe, and maybe that will help you open up your mind and open your experiences. So if you can do that, doing it through the arts is such an easy way to do it, because you're not on the line, you're not personally invested, but you can still feel things. I read once that Call Me By Your Name was the first time that some men believed that two men could be in love or something. Just don't protect him, your brother, your future significant other, your current significant other. Don't protect them from things. Let them see what the world is like. Let them see the beauty and the difficulty in other people's experiences. Okay. Hi, Olivie. Lately, I've been feeling more and more like I have to make a compromise between staying informed and staying sane, because there's just so much information that is easily accessible, and all of it varying degrees of disturbing. I'm not even an outdoorsy person, but I've had to resort to so many impromptu walks to clear my head, which works wonders, to be honest. It's almost as if staying indoors forever is bad for you. but I'm afraid that every time I step back, I might miss something that's even worse. So I was wondering if you would talk about how you deal with these news cycles. Bro, there's not a good way to deal with it. There really isn't. I mean, you can only stay as informed, I think. Oh, I forgot about. Here's what I do. I only go on Twitter like once a day. I kind of float around to see what's up, what's new. I do a little cursory Google search to see what people are talking about. But then that's it. And then I step away and I'm like, that is enough for today. The world is super shitty right now. And it used to be that staying informed was like the intellectual thing to do. But at this point, I think you have to do the self-care thing, which is pick a time of day when your whole day isn't going to be ruined. So don't read the news right when you wake up in the morning. Or, like pick a time when you could go take yourself for a walk so you can kind of take in the news. Like I said earlier, experience is important. So it's important to know what's going on in the world and what other people are going through. You can't be sheltered in your own little box. But you do have to take care of yourself. So pick a time of day when you've eaten. Food is so important. When you have eaten and you are hydrated and you are well rested. Not right before bed, not right when you wake up. Maybe like a little before dinner. Or a little after. You pick a time when you feel like you're kind of okay. Prep yourself for bad news. Check Twitter or the news or social media or whatever. Inform yourself for about 5 minutes. That's about all it takes. And then, because then you have to spend the rest of like an hour like decompressing, Just don't sacrifice your need to know what's going on, even though that's important. It is important. Don't block it all out. But think about your mental health. And I guess I would prepare yourself to think about, well, what can I do about this? A lot of times the answer is nothing, which is the hard part. But like, say if you're going to go for a walk and you've read this terrible news, and that's terrible because the world is a whole mess, think about maybe one thing you could do to make it better. Or something you're already doing. Like voting, for example. I vote absentee, which, is, again, this is a US thing, but yeah. I've been voting absentee for like several years. So yeah, I'm going to fill out my ballot later today and send it in. Early voting, also a thing. There's an anecdote after this that I'm definitely going to post on Tumblr about how an election really can sway things. Like if everybody who is upset actually went to the polls, we could really see a difference. It's when you think to yourself, I can't actually change anything, that's the problem. Okay, here's the big one. If it's not too weird, sex advice for someone without experience. So I'm going to be honest with you, my very first instinct was, oh my god, it's too weird, I can't talk about sex. And then immediately after, I remembered that if I don't talk about sex, then you're going to get your information from the internet or from your stupid friends. Not to say your friends are stupid, but I'm just going to go ahead and assume that they are. My siblings' friends are stupid. I've already had to come to this sort of conclusion before. So my siblings are much younger than I am, and they constantly ask me about sex, which is obviously very difficult. The last thing I want to talk to my sister about is whether or not she's having orgasms. But I do because I think there are some important things to know. But if sex talk is going to make you uncomfortable, bye, it was fun. We're going to talk about sex in as frank and as candid a way as I can. Starting now. Before you have sex, okay? Birth control is not going to protect you from STDs. So, have condoms. If you are anywhere in the sex having age, also, buy your own condoms, okay? It's 2018. We are strong, independent women, okay? It's totally fine. I know it's a weird, it seems like it's a weird purchase, but buy yourself some condoms, okay? Buy yourself some lube. I'm going to talk about lubricant so much. So just get ready for that. But I just want you to understand, so birth control will protect you from being pregnant. It will not protect you from any potential diseases. And the way that STDs can be treated, if they can be treated, is with antibiotics. And if you've already been on a lot of antibiotics, those don't help a lot. Also with antibiotics, they can make your birth control less effective. Keep that in mind. If you're on antibiotics, do not have sex without a condom. Okay? Okay. The thing about condoms, if you're using condoms, you almost definitely need lube, okay? Because they're mostly dry and uncomfortable. The thing about sex is it has to be lubricated. This is like any kind of sex. And one way you can do that is with foreplay. You need that because sex is very uncomfortable if it's dry. If it's dry, that's a good sign you're not that into it and your partner hasn't made enough effort to make sure that your body is ready. When I say your body is ready for sex, I mean you have to be wet down there. Not with water. Water is like, actually, sex in the shower is very unpleasant because water is the opposite of lubrication. Okay, it's not very unpleasant. It can be unpleasant. I'll get back to that. Okay. If your partner is not taking enough care with foreplay and it hurts, use lubricant. It'll feel much, much better. If you need material, the best website I always suggest for porn is bellesa.co. It is owned and operated by women. The companies that they take the porn videos from are companies that are also like kind to women. If you are curious, there are instructive type videos. There's girl on girl stuff if that's what you're curious about. There's a whole collection of erotic stories. There's like it's just it's sex positive feminism. It's a very like comfortable place to be, okay? I wouldn't just search the internet for porn. If you're curious, this is the kind of place you want to go. Birth control, condoms, protection. Definitely use protection, okay? If something smells weird, if it looks weird, if it's off-colored, don't touch it, okay? Don't be afraid to say no because some of those STDs you could have for life. So if something's weird about his or hers or whatever's going on, if something weird is there, don't do it. Consent also. Say yes. If they are rushing without making sure you're into it, this is not someone you want to be intimate with, okay? Consent is so important, and you also need to know this. The other person that you're with needs to say yes. It won't kill the mood, okay? I've seen lots of things about sexy ways for consent, and it's just like, hey, are you into this? Do you like that? Do you want to keep going? These are not uncomfortable questions in the moment, okay? Okay, let's talk about losing your virginity. It has to be someone you trust, someone who's gonna stop when you say stop, someone you feel comfortable saying, I don't like that, okay? If you can't say, I don't like that to the person you're losing your virginity to, they're not the right person. I'm not gonna tell you need to wait for marriage or need to wait until you're loved, but you do need to wait until you're with someone you're not afraid to say stop to, okay? And you know that they'll stop. That's the kind of person you need to lose your virginity to. It's going to be uncomfortable. You might bleed. I bled. Some people don't. Some people think that's a myth. It's not a myth, but it doesn't happen to everyone. But it might happen. The one thing, I just have lubricant with you. Use a condom. Know that it's not going to be the most magical moment in your life, okay? You're probably not going to come. First of all, it's not that easy to have an orgasm. I'll get back to orgasms. Rule number 1. If you need to have sex to keep him, he is not planning to stay, okay? Repeat that back to me. If you feel like you need to have sex in order to keep him with you, he isn't going to stay. This is super important, okay? Do not have sex because you feel like you need to. Have sex because you want to, because you're curious. I don't know, but do it because you want to. Do not do it because he needs you to, okay? Let's talk about orgasms now. Most women cannot come from penetration alone. I hope that was a good enough reason to use the word penetration. Usually, you need some sort of friction against your clitoris also. This is where lubrication is important, because if it's dry and you're rubbing against there, it's not comfortable. So either the naturally occurring fluids from sex will make it better, or lubricant. In terms of the sex positions that are going to be best for a woman, it's probably going to be a combination of him or her rubbing against your clit while maximizing the angle of insertion, okay? Because I've heard people say the G-spot doesn't exist. I don't think that's true. I mean, I can certainly find mine, but it's up there. And it's at a certain angle, and if you hit it enough times, you're gonna come, okay? If you want a vibrator, friggin' go for it. It's probably more reliable than a dude. So let's talk about missionary. That is you on your back, him on top. That's like sex in all the movies. Just as a general rule, almost all sex positions can be improved by a strategically placed pillow. So if missionary is not that fun for you, which it is actually a pretty good one in terms of getting the clit and the penetration together so you can get the G-spot and the clitoris involved, you might need your hips raised up, so you can put a pillow under your hips. You can try wrapping your legs around his hips. If he is very athletic, he can lift your hips up himself, and that angles him better. So one thing that can often make sex better is if you touch yourself during sex, because if he's not reaching a clitoris, you probably can. And a lot of women are not that comfortable with that. So a good way to start if you want to try doing that is, so cowgirl is when the girl is on top. Reverse cowgirl is when the girl is on top, but she's facing away. Most guys like this position because they can like see your butt, and they can't see if you're touching yourself. So if you want to start without looking him directly in the eye, you can start with reverse cowgirl and try that out and see if you like it. Maybe you won't, but you can try. Some women really like doggy style because it's a much deeper penetration usually. So you can make it better or worse. You can experiment by how high your hips are versus how high he is. So you could, for example, be lying all the way down on your stomach, and that could be one thing, or you could be on all fours. All of those angles are going to change. Just as long as you're with someone where you can say, that hurts, I don't like that, oh, that feels good, you're good. I mentioned in the shower is not that great because water is not a lubricant. You can get dry down there really quickly despite being wet up here. On top of things, like if you're lying down on a table, for example, and he's standing, that is very much dependent on his height, but that can be great. If you are touching yourself during that, that can also improve that. If something is missing, you can always throw that in yourself. I mean, he can also touch you, but it's kind of like I imagine a girl giving a hand job can't be that great to a guy because, like, he probably knows precisely what he likes and you don't, which is kind of what clit rubbing seems like sometimes. It's just like, well, I could potentially do a better job of this, but it's nice that you're here. I guess some myths: you can get pregnant from the first time. You can get pregnant a million different ways. So be on birth control, use a condom, do both at least until you trust your partner, until you are like, hey, have you been tested? And that's not a weird question. If it's a weird question, then continue using a condom. God, I've just traversed so many topics at this point. I mean, I hope this helps you. I don't know if it does. Oh, I guess let's talk about, obviously sex is different if it's two girls or two guys. I mean, the same rules apply. Lubrication's still super important. You still want to protect yourself, okay? STDs can be transmitted a million different ways. I don't personally have a lot of resources on this, but I'll find some. I think I dug up an article last year during like Safe Sex Weeks from BuzzFeed or something. So I'll throw it in here so that you guys have that. The concepts are the same though. It's just you want to be with a person where you can tell them when you like something or when you don't like something. You trust them to stop when you want to stop. You can always stop, okay? You're not punishing the other person by stopping. Like, if they make you feel bad, that's on them, okay? Because sex is not that hard, okay? They can like go finish themselves off if that is so important. Don't listen to a guy who complains about blue balls. If you are not ready, then you are not ready. And don't force it. And like I said, you don't need to be in love to have sex. Obviously, it's better when you have a connection with the person that you're with, but you do need to have some element of trust. You do need to know that you can tell them how you're feeling and what you're experiencing, and they care whether or not you're enjoying yourself. As a woman who really enjoys sex, okay, sex positivity is really important to me. I think a lot of women have bad sex because we don't really know how it works, or we're discouraged from masturbating. Men make jokes about it all the time, but women don't talk about it. We are discouraged from exploring things. That's because there used to be a price on our virginity, okay? That is the patriarchy. It is okay to like sex. It's okay to not like sex. It's okay to wait if you want to wait. Everything is okay as long as you give your consent, you protect yourself from pregnancies and STDs, and it's something you want to do. That goes the whole time, okay? You should feel like you have the autonomy to tell them to stop at any time. Any time, okay? Don't ever let anyone tell you they can stop, okay? Everyone can stop. If you are not ready, you need it to stop, you can tell them to stop. It is your body. And on the flip side of that, it is your body. If you want to explore it, then explore it. If you want to know what you like, then find out what you like. And don't be ashamed of that. Just consent, protection. If the angle's not good, put a pillow somewhere. Well, and now I suppose I'm going to end on that marvelous note. Yeah, so remember that LTV, The Lovely Tangle Vices pre-order is available. The book comes out on Halloween. I just finished Paradox if you want to read that. Yeah. This was so very awkward. I'm going to drink so much more wine. I'm really sorry if it was weird. You can ask me more specific questions too. I promise I'll answer them to the best of my ability. However good that ability is. Okay. Well, this has been me, Olivie Blake, not writing, and I'll see you next week.